There aren't a whole lot of games out there that feature characters with names like the Port City Manhood Masher. That's a name I could recite from memory from the first time I read it, a phrase burned into my mind that I feel the gnawing sensation to shout like the cursed number 19 from the Dark Tower series. As far as I'm aware, no other horror games tell you to be a friendly bean, and also let you break dudes' faces open with metal pipes. As far back as the Enigma Trilogy videos, I've argued the transcendent value across indie games is that they do things other games can't or won't do out of some mix of conventional fear or the limits of a more collaborative imagination, and probably sometimes just good old human decency. But to hell with all of those things. We're at the end of the world, and all there is left is you, me, and these snuff tapes I just found. This is Butcher's Creek, baby. I cannot bring myself to do a more serious essay on this game, so you guys are getting cheap knockoff, like, Civi 11 Nat today. Got it? Good. I've kept this side of me caged for too long. You'll see normal me again soon for Pathologic 2, and this me again for Blood vs. Cultic if I ever get around to it. When is Chapter 2 releasing, JSAWs? Okay, then I have time. So, why am I so excited about Butcher's Creek? Well, for those of you that don't already know, any game that's hinting at having scary dudes wearing masks and giving me a little manhunty side-eye, I'm immediately enamored with. But the day I learned about Butcher's Creek, probably back in early 2024, it went to the coveted #1 spot on my wish list and never left. I checked every single day for updates on the game religiously until the general release date was set. A few agonizing months and one really amazing demo later, and my most anticipated game of 2024 releases. I finally get to talk about it in full, and for as sloppily as this one might come together, I'm so happy I'm finally making it. Thanks for hanging out with me to hear me rant, and boy am I finna rant. So when you begin, you're going to immediately need a weapon. The game presents you with 2 here, and a third way better one stuck in the tree. Also, you have an important choice to make: performance or style. See, the axe in the tree seems a little better to use, but hammers are cooler. I'll take the axe this time. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the layout of the opening tutorial levels. I went over a lot of this in the demo walkthrough, which you should go and watch again, but there was something cool and new, I think, back here behind this stuff. I found my way out of bounds, to the weird empty half of the first level, but never found anything inside of it besides an infinite void you can fall into, and up here the car models that go flying off the road and into one of the blobby mountains that circle the trail. I love stuff like this in games, even if the reward is just having found and explored a part of the game that was left in just for the people who go looking. I wonder what else I haven't found, or maybe if I fall off this side just right I can like speed run to the end or something. Never mind. If you found other secret stuff, talk about it in the comments. There, I referenced my other content and asked people to engage with it. YouTube, please start suggesting my videos to people. Anyway, like it tells you in the very opening in some apocalyptic language, you've traveled here looking for a place where you can get deranged videotapes and stumbled into the middle of a snuff film ring that's also a religious cult? We never know our protagonist's name or get his clothes back, but we find out the snuff guys already have a title for him in one of their doomsday prophecies, the Tooth Sower. I'm jumping around a little bit, but don't worry, none of it would make sense if I went sequentially. This game has 2 tie-ins from other Szymanski titles that I haven't played, but take place in the same universe: Squirrel Stapler and The Pony Factory. How much they have to do with our guy in Butcher's Creek, or the cult that's formed there, I don't know. What I do know is their goal. This cult is sending its snuff tapes down below the earth into a giant industrial pit thing to satiate the Watcher, a chained god that will be freed to bring about the end times once he meets the Tooth Sower. And they're trying to keep the thing happy and asleep until we show up. And then we show up. So, as you've seen by now, you've got all the stuff you'd think of to fight with. Pipes, boards, knives, shovels. I think my 2 favorite weapons in the game are either the sledgehammer or the shovel. If your weapon breaks during combat, and it will, you can also pick up boxes and cans and kick them at your enemies to do some damage. I prefer cinder blocks if I'm going that route, or explosive gas cans. A few times you get put inside of areas where you can kick people into whirling saw blades or off ledges. This is the kind of stuff I feel is obligatory if you're going to be able to use your bare feet to fight off groups of masked killers, so I'm glad to see it used so well here. Weapons are each broken down into the 3 stats: speed, damage, condition, which you can see by holding one weapon and hovering over another. A weapon hit on an unsuspecting enemy from behind kills them in one hit, no matter the weapon, which is awesome. But that's as close as we ever get to the manhunt executions, which kinda sucks. Stuff like pocket knives and box cutters are pretty much useless, even throwing them isn't very effective. Enemies also seem to take somewhat random amounts of damage. Sometimes you'll cleave a dude's head off with an axe in one swing, sometimes it takes 4. You can put up your weapon to block or parry, which can be a lifesaver, and you kinda need to get good at if you're playing on the hard difficulty. Getting hit takes chunks of health, but also knocks the wind out of you, so you can't really just stand and tank hits. It feels a lot more like the tiny bit of condemned Criminal Origins that I was able to stomach without going through the lengthy process of fixing the game so it would look and feel right on a modern PC. Mechanically, the game is tied much more closely to that game than it is Manhunt. Fighting can feel strange at first, like you need to be way closer to your enemy than you actually need to be, or like they're hitting you from across the room. It's just something you have to get used to, or maybe it's just a me thing. I'm not sure. I got better. That said, fighting in the game feels awesome. Sometimes you get dogpiled by enemies and trapped in a corner. Sometimes you swing your axe and kill 2 people at once, or get a really good throw-in with a weapon or object. Once you get the parrying down, even generally, the combat becomes even more intense, since you don't have to swing and retreat over and over again. Swinging the weapons and connecting feels just as weighty as when the weapons come crashing into you. It can be a little samey for some people, I'm sure, but I think it's pretty addicting. So, all over the levels, you'll find environmental gore that you can take pictures of, or Polaroids lying around. Those are your only 2 ways of getting lost health back inside of each chapter, other than the fresh blood that hits the walls after you're done fighting enemies. You can't take pictures of the bodies to get health back, which is fine. That would be way too broken with how many guys the game ends up throwing at you. Even their blood isn't worth a whole lot compared to the crime scenes they turn their victims into, which I'm not sure if that's like a message or if it's just another balancing thing. Enemies in the game come in 4 variations. Normal burlap sack dudes, the slightly more elite camo and ski mask hunters, the faster hitting unicorn head chicks, and the big welder mask dudes who I call Marvs. The unicorn head chicks will fuck you up if you don't take care of them quickly and watch your step, like when you fight a pair of them in a strip club level. I do think the game is long enough that there could have been a little more enemy variety, or even something that made the enemies we do have feel a little more different than one might have more health and one moves a little faster. Hey, I guess that actually is a little bit more like Manhunt than Condemned, so okay, I stand a little bit corrected. I do think that the cult angle is a little bit silly, but it does explain why everyone dresses the same and why you're fighting just one group of hunters. In fact, there's a note you find in the beginning where one hunter is complaining about it. This game is more about being fun than being over-the-top dark, but it does have its moments. The tone of a lot of the notes you read are pretty funny, until you read the suggestions for each of the victims left outside the cages or rooms. Split the tongue, harvest the eyes, lick the scalp, cup the balls, stuff like that. It's just hard to take seriously when you're reading this stuff while walking through places with names like the Magic Fairy Castle. That's roughly where we rejoin our Naked Tooth Sower once the demo content is done. And look, with a name like the Magic Fairy Castle, it better be good. It is. This is the level after the mostly samey-looking series of basements. Once you leave them and get out into the nighttime, you're way too far away from everything to walk back naked through this forest, and you only have like a measly 8 snuff tapes, so you might as well press on. This brings you to where the game really picks up, both in difficulty and level design, when you come to this weird prison mansion where the most deranged member lives. The Mitch characters represent him as far as I'm concerned, hence the name. And his letters to himself and the other cultists are my favorite ones to read. I've been hoarding snuff tapes all game to keep my health bar as high as possible, but not anymore. The intro is over with now, and the game is going to start throwing more and more at you. The hazy red of the rooms inside the castle, mixed with the Christmas lights strewn across the upstairs ceiling, are where the game is really telling you visually to buckle in, and showing you that it hasn't played all of its cards yet. I don't know what it is about this particular hallway that I find so disturbing, but it sticks with me. Along the way, you've been reading those notes I keep mentioning and piecing together the story between the main figures in the cult. I kind of like that our protagonist has so little to do with this side of the narrative that they get all of the good writing and scattered plot beats. With the exception of one note that has a clue you need in it, you could skip the notes entirely if you're just here to fight dudes. We're really just here to get tapes and get out, as far as we know. but we will go over some of the names you've been seeing on the screen. Barry and Travis seem to be two of the most prominent, with the former being a recruiter and the latter being the infamous Port City manhood masher. Hey, I got to say it twice. They also seem to be trying to keep what I shudder to call an air of professionalism around this whole operation, even trying to recruit people's wives and sisters for their strip club. At least we know roughly where geographically this game takes place now. Wait, holy shit, is this also a spiritual successor to Redneck Rampage? Everyone's favorite character, Mitch, represents the cultists that have become too deranged to control anymore, so they're sent to the Magic Fairy Castle. I really cannot imagine what kind of behavior lands you here when the rest of your cohorts are, like, killing people. Their big crime, it turns out, is that their videos are not quite up to snuff. Pun intended. You guys know what this means in the bigger lore, right? It means that Travis and Barry are micromanagers, which makes them the actual villains. Outside in the exile shacks, you learn the fate of a recruit named Will who asked too many questions and doubted too often, but he's not the only one. Even the cult's prophecy writer and researcher, Jack, falls on the wrong side of their judgment eventually. I'm pretty sure that by this point, most of these guys have either been killed off by accident or for some perceived slight against the group. So by the time we show up and begin our tooth sowing, there's no one really left in Butcher's Creek but the leaderless and the insane. One truly amazing note we find is trying to warn a member about all of the spooky shit that goes on around the cult and how the area they are based in seems supernatural in many ways. To emphasize, it tells the story about how an entire town simply vanished from all maps, memory, and roads. Not one single person remembers the town anymore, where it was, or that it even existed. So, before you go doubting us, just think back on how no one can remember that town. Whatever it was called. Everything after the Magic Fairy Castle is mostly descending into the huge pit I mentioned earlier while the game starts to get progressively more challenging. The earth below the cult compound is hollow and full of more environmental hazards like acid puddles and pits. Near the end of the game, some enemies are invisible, which is a total dick move, but there aren't that many, so it's fine. The very last chapter is where all of the stops get pulled out. Traps, groups, and limited weapons to pick up in pretty much every room. Scene selecting into this chapter on hard is the game's ultra-violence mode. Same as playing with a no saves rule, but condensed. It is also the best chapter as far as tension goes, and then there's the music. I'm going to risk a little bit of bad information here. See, Andrew Husholt is credited in the game, and this is the guy making all the best music for whatever boomer shooter or indie you're currently playing. He did voice work for the game, and I think he did the music here at the end. It does fit his style a lot. But I tried asking around and researching to get a full answer, and no one will answer my Twitter DMs, so I don't really know who to credit the music to. Apparently the game doesn't either. Alright, I'm going to go off script for a second here, and we're going to listen to a little bit of this music. I just have to give you guys a taste. I don't care if it gets hit. Alright, check this out. Oh man, this level is so damn good. Once you're through all of this and reach the end, you stand before the Gate of the Watcher. Piles of videotapes littering the offering tables in front of it. Walking into the tunnel, you're met with a flashing sequence, and the communion happens. This creature thing charges at you out of the darkness, and a flashing message appears over and over as everything winds up, and then silence. Rather than having an epic showdown, you've joined forces and become fast friends. A final outro round of poetic doomsday lyrics telling us that the Tooth Sower and the Watcher have fallen in love, and they will watch the apocalypse unfold together. On VHS, apparently. While this game is really amazing, there is a slightly disappointing part to all of this, which is that short of a miracle, we never will really get to see the completed Butcher's Creek. This is Dave Szymanski's last project working on Unity 2019, and he's moving to bluer pastures with Godot. I'm not sure if he'll ever revisit this photo-sourced look, or if the universe that contains Butcher's Creek, Squirrel Stapler, and the Pony Factory are getting more entries. The game was cut down to size, and probably ended up releasing after being in development for a really long time because of these cuts. I guess since the game had a much smaller scope than what I had originally dreamed it would, it ends up feeling more fitting overall. Still, I do wonder what we missed out on. Whether there were scenes after we meet the Watcher, or just more cool levels to kill cultists in. It would be nice to get an uncut Butcher's Creek someday, if the game were to become popular enough or something. Look, I guess I understand not wanting beating dudes up with hatchets in basements to be your passion project and #1 focus for your indie game career. My view counts telegraph to me that we, my friends, are not the most popular niche of gamer out there. But I do think that we're getting closer to what all Manhunt fans have been waiting for. Going from having basically 0 other games to play that could be called Manhunt successors to having one now is progress. Even if we have been waiting, what, 17 years now? Holy shit. Look, at any rate, I'm glad to be adding a game to my little watch list games genre that I was there for its release. Most of these titles I've come to years after the fact, as I am wont to do. If you look around out there, someone has made or is making an indie game that will speak to you from the same place your favorite games do. I'm still waiting for a game to really try and tackle the full Manhunt experience in an updated engine, and I'm sure I'll be waiting for that for a very long time. But games like Butcher's Creek do help ease the pain of that waiting. Thank you guys so much for watching. If there are any Manhunt successors out there that I've completely missed somehow over all this time, you should let me know below. If you play Butcher's Creek and you want to talk about it, just feel free to comment. You can follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, and I will see you guys at the next one.